Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigator's Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level. NCISS is inviting all investigative professionals to join an open town hall meeting on Tuesday, February 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's not too late to sign up. There are some major data privacy concerns on the horizon that you should know about. This could affect our ability to do investigative work. The meeting is free to attend, so visit nciss.com to register or check the show notes for a direct link. Are you in the New York metro area and are looking for work? Satellite Investigations is currently looking for a full-time field investigator. Visit Matt's profile on LinkedIn for more details and the links in the show notes. Good luck.
She loves me not. She loves me not.
Today is our Valentine's Day episode of PI Perspectives. Love's in the air and so are scams. Javier Leiva, the host of Pretend Podcast, joins us today. Javier's program explores people's need to pretend that they're someone they're not. He's had some great episodes, and his show is worth a listen, so check it out. Today we focus on con artists and romance scams. Get ready for a fun look into some crazy cases. Please welcome Javier Leiva and your host, Playing Cupid, private investigator Matt Spaier.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. This is the Valentine's Day edition of PI Perspectives. It's actually on a Monday, which is when our episode airs anyways. So I was trying to think what I wanted to do. Usually we do some sort of, let's talk about a scam. Last year we had Emmanuel Welsh on, which was awesome. Today, we have a great guest. I'm very, very, very excited to welcome Javier Leiva to the program. Javier, how are you?
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. This is awesome. What a great topic, because this is the time of year, where romance scams start flaring up. I mean, they happen throughout the whole year, but this is the time when we should talk about them for sure.
Yeah, definitely gained some traction this time of year. So, you have a great podcast. It's called Pretend. Actually, you have two podcasts, but I was introduced to you through Pretend, through Michael Bazell. I guess you guys did a joint project together. So tell me a little bit about your background and the shows that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I started my career in journalism, doing documentaries for a local PBS station in Tampa. And that was still probably the best job I've ever had, because it's just heartwarming stories and it was great. But eventually PBS doesn't pay very well, so I had to move into news. And so I started doing broadcast news. Right. And I was a photojournalist, and it was great because that was a great job, because every day you had to deliver something by 5 o'clock. You had to deliver a story, and it was over. And the next day you did it again. And I got into a lot of trouble, chased a lot of bad guys. And that's where I kind of cut my investigative teeth, right? So the PBS station was a storytelling teeth, and now I'm learning how to investigate.
I feel like, when you're telling me this, I'm just thinking about like Spider-Man and Superman,
Yeah, that's where I'm getting
yelling,
my superpower power.
Chewing on a cigar going, "Where's my story?"
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot like that. I mean, no, where is my stories? Which is nuts. I mean, if we could take like a quick aside, every day at, let's say, 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, you would go into this room with all the other reporters and the assignment desk people and the producers, and they would write story ideas on the wall, on the whiteboard, and we would chase whatever story we were assigned. Well, by lunchtime, we figure out that, hey, that's not even a story. Like, grandma didn't get run over by a reindeer. She had a brush in with a reindeer or something. It's never what you think it is. Right. So you have to start all over again and find the story. And then they make you get 2 other stories while you're doing that. And then you got to like edit it and turn it around by 5 o'clock. It was a miracle every single time.
That's crazy.
It was nuts.
I mean, I can appreciate as being a creative, right? So you get to do your creative stuff and tell your stories and all that. But I can also see the stress and disappointment. It's almost like being on Saturday Night Live and Lorne Michaels says, yeah, cut for time. Sorry. We're going to run with it.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, I worked in a small market once, and it was a Sunday and nothing happened in that town on Sunday. And we were my reporter and I were literally driving around looking for a story. And we found Jesus walking down the street, some guy barefoot that looked like Jesus. And so we interviewed him, and it was awesome. I mean, but yeah, the news world is wild,
That reminds me of a couple of years ago, there was a guy, he was a homeless guy. And they dubbed him the Golden Pipes guy, right? So this was a guy, he had this incredible radio voice, but he happened to be homeless, right? So they're interviewing about something else, and they're like, well, what's your backstory? And he goes into this whole thing about how he was in radio and that he became addicted to drugs or alcohol or something, and just ruined his life. And then everybody heard about it. It was like a YouTube sensation. It was all over the news. He got another gig, and he lasted, I don't know, another few months before he got back into the drinking and drugging. And,
he got back into the drugs.
Yeah. So he fell off again, and it was crazy. That was the last I heard about that. But
addiction is terrible, man. But no, to answer your question, you were asking me about the podcast. So I have 2 podcasts. The first one that I started was Pretend, and it's where I interview con artists and their victims. It's really just about deception, people pretending to be someone else. That's the concept. And so every episode I try to explore that. And the other podcast is called Criminal Conduct, which I actually co-host, and my co-host is a former Secret Service agent and PI. He's a PI, so he's great. We're like yin and yang. He's very analytical, and I'm very out there and very.
He's the straight guy.
I'm the emotional person.
Right.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, Pretend. I'm all in. You have a great recent episode with a former KGB agent. I couldn't turn it off. It was so good. I totally recommend everybody go check it out. It's really
that's a good story. I was so excited for that one to come out, because never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I was going to interview a KGB agent.
And he was so forthcoming, which was amazing.
I think I caught him on a really good day too.
Talking about multiple families, multiple children, just crazy.
It was very kind of heartbreaking, the whole story, how he was wrestling with these 2 identities, he became an American, in every sense of the word.
Yeah. And then if you go back and you listen to, there was another one about Santa, right? Around Christmas, but that was pretty cool.
Hey, that's the #1 pretender, right?
Yeah.
People and the elf on the shelf, the biggest lie of them all. Yeah.
Well, we don't, in my household, we've never pretend about Santa. My kids knew very early on that yes, this people celebrate this, who this person is, but no, he's not real.
Yeah.
I have friends of mine that were angry with me for doing that, but I'm like, I think deceiving my kids.
If there's anybody listening to this that hasn't gotten married yet or hasn't had children yet, you should probably have this discussion with your partner, because you're going to get caught into this big lie, and then it's going to spin out of control, and you're going to have to keep it up for years. And it's very stressful.
Right. Yeah. You can definitely, definitely cause some problems if you don't talk about it up front.
And then, prenups.
Right, prenups, right, exactly. And then there was another one about hypnotism, which was really, really cool. Yeah, those are the ones off the top of my head that I've consumed so far. That was just like, wow, this is great.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, that hypnotist one was one. Every now and then I like to do a personal episode, something about me. I turn the mic on myself, and those are the stressful ones, because when I finish it, I don't know if it's good or not, because it's about me, you know. And so when people listen to it and it's well received, that makes me feel better, because it's kind of putting yourself out there, you know.
I thought what was really interesting about that was the idea that when someone is under hypnosis, and they're suggestible, that you really can't use their testimony, because you're almost, you could be planting evidence in someone's brain, which is like, if you think about it, like kind of makes sense, you know. And the state of Texas,
memories are like clay. You can just shape them, you know.
Yeah. So apparently, I guess the state of Texas like uses that a lot, the hypnosis testimony, which I didn't
the Texas Rangers love doing hypnotism. They actually have this room called the memory room, where, you know, it's so funny because it could be implanting memories, and people, from anything from a lost cat to a homicide.
Go figure. Or a collared shirt, apparently, right? That was you know, a little spoiler alert. Go check it out. So good stuff. So what how did you get into this idea of like pretend and answering questions? Like, where did that passion come from, that you have this quest to answer questions?
I don't know, man. You know, I've answered this question a lot of times because I think people want like some clear answer, like I had some sort of mission or something. But you know what it was? It was a happy accident. Like the fact that I just did it because I wanted something to do that was creative at the time. And originally the podcast was supposed to be about people pretending to be someone else, like actors and improv comedians and ghost writers and stuff like that. And I realized quickly that was really boring. That was not going to be an exciting show. So I met my cousin. My cousin is a con artist, and everybody knew that in the family, except nobody really asked him what he did. And so I sat with him, you know, one night, and he just told me everything, and I recorded the whole thing, and I go, wow, that's what this story is about. I don't even like crime, but I kind of just went along with it, and it's cool. It's taken a life of its own.
Yeah, what it really comes down to is just social engineering, right? And we're going to dive into that a little bit later on how somebody who is a con artist, or somebody who is a predator like that, can really read in on certain situations and really use it to their advantage, and really mess with people's lives, which is crazy, because this whole catfishing thing, it's been around forever, but the implementation of the internet really has changed it as well, and it's caused it to morph into different things, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely out there, and I think the more we talk about it, the more people should become aware. I think the elderly are big targets, just because they're not as connected, and they don't know all these new things that are out there, and so they're just easy targets. The
trusting generation too, the way things were back then, the 50s and 60s, if somebody told you something, it was, you didn't say, that's BS. You didn't question them. Okay.
Yeah.
Red is blue and blue is red. I get you.
Yeah. So. I mean, right now, if you're an old lady on Facebook and with an open profile, I mean, you're like prime, you're just like chum out there in the water.
Right, get into Bitcoin, leave money to your grandchildren, buy this Bitcoin, invest in this, do this. It's all crazy stuff. So I think we're going to jump out and take a break real quick. And when we come back in, we're going to really dive into the topic. I want to start talking about some romance scams and things to watch out for. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back. I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information, I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of ScopeNow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that ScopeNow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Registration is open for the first annual Security and Licensed Investigator Conference in Augusta, Georgia. Gain skill and knowledge from top-tier speakers. You'll learn from the industry's leading professionals in security and investigation on the following topics: practical aspect of death investigation, perimeter and facility security, organized crime investigations for private investigators, negligent security investigations, crimes against disabled adults and the elderly, CADE, CADE, active shooter mitigation training, how to engage your federal law enforcement partners, investigating officer-involved shootings, and ethics for private investigators. Learn more by visiting cga-solutions.com. That's cga-solutions.com. See the link in the show notes. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. We're here at the Valentine's Day edition, and we've got Javier Leiva here. Javier, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, so we are talking about scams, and we're talking about romance scams. And with your background with pretend podcasting and that episode and all that, I thought it'd be pretty cool to talk about some experiences you may have knowledge of these incidents here. So let's jump into one right away. Tell me an incident that you're aware of that you thought was pretty interesting.
Well, you know what? Even when you approached me about this, I started thinking about it, because we say romance scam as it's this one bucket of scams, but even within that category, there's multiple categories within romance scams. And you mentioned one earlier before the break, which is catfishing. That's one. But then there's bigamy, like the bigamists that are out there. That's another one. And there's turning innocent people into money mules. That's like another one. I mean, there's like so many different ways. There's a type of romance scam where you never see the person that you are in contact with, but then there's the ones that I've covered where you actually, the victim actually sees this person, builds a personal in-person relationship with this person.
Right.
There's all different types of flavors of romance scams. The first one I did was as early as season 1. It was called, the episode I did called The Bigamist, where there was this woman who was dating this man, and he was overseas, and he, they're actually very similar. I've done 2 stories where if you switched out the names, it's the same scam. But essentially the way it works is there's a man that comes into this woman's life. He has a very important job for the government. Okay. So that immediately shuts her off from a lot of details. She can't know a lot about his life, but all she knows is that he has to go in and out of the country multiple times. And in reality, what he's doing is that he has multiple wives, multiple girlfriends, and he's playing them all at the same time.
Right.
And these guys, in both the examples, because I have one called The Bigamist and the other one called, I'm already forgetting the names of my episodes. I think it was called Duped with Abby Ellen. Both of them, those guys are still out there. And they're probably doing the same thing with a different name. Right. Because somebody was asking me today, actually today, they texted me, they're like, hey, is conning somebody a crime? And I said, actually, no, conning somebody is not a crime. Right. Can you arrest somebody and charge somebody with a crime because of their cons? Yes, but it takes a very savvy prosecutor to do that, because especially with romance scams, the victim willingly participates. The victim willingly gives over their money. The victim willingly smuggles or like launders money for them. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard. And sometimes, and then some of the cases that I've covered, the victim is actually the one that gets charged with the crime.
Right. Well, you mentioned that, and there was a huge art theft in New York City with a gallery that was selling faked modernist paintings, and they ended up catching this woman who was, I guess she was the broker, brokering all the deals for selling these pieces. And it turns out like her boyfriend was the guy who was providing the fake art, and she was actually selling it. So it was like one of these deals where he like swept her off off her feet and had her now start doing like illegal activities, and of course she claimed later on, like, I didn't know they were fake. I was just, trying to do all this stuff. But it's a very, very interesting whole thing that went down, and like $80 million worth of art. She moved and she did time. She ended up going to jail for it.
Oh, man. Well, let me tell you about one that I covered that is probably the most memorable one, the one that left my jaw wide open because I couldn't believe it. But the case involves Art Schliester, which was a famous college quarterback in Ohio State. And he basically after college became a gambler and started getting into gambling problems, losing a lot of money. And he came across the widow of a Wendy's CEO, not Dave Thomas, the one that we all know, but the guy that took over after Dave Thomas. Right. But he passed away, left a fortune for this lady. She knew Art Schliester, through a friend of a friend of a friend, and they reconnected at a party, and he immediately latched onto her. Now, she would never admit that there was a romantic relationship involved, but there was definitely an emotional connection. Whether it was romantic or not, she was emotionally attached to this guy. Right. And she would loan him money, he would gamble it, and it was a spiral thing where he could never keep up with the debt that he owed her. And it got so bad that this little innocent widow of this millionaire CEO, she loses everything. Wow. Everything she had, she lost. She gave away her entire fortune. And guess what she does next?
Flips
she
burgers?
Starts scamming her other rich friends for money.
Okay.
She became the perpetrator at that point.
Crazy.
And it's just nuts that what a con artist could do to you, because that's what the genius behind a con artist is, that they don't actually do the crime. They let you willingly do it for them.
Yeah.
And she got into a lot of trouble, but now they're making a movie out of it. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm just having this memory now of one of the episodes I listened to with you guys when you were explaining like old expressions and how they came about.
Oh yeah,
the cat out of the bag.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. And that was a con, right? So let's talk about that real quick, right? So
yeah, the cat out of the bag. I think it was pig in a poke is another expression.
Another one. Yep.
That's right. Well, and they're related, those two, because back in the day, pigs were hard to come by, and so if you were going to sell a pig, you would put it in a poke. A poke is a bag,
right?
And you would exchange money and you would get your little piglet, right? Well, scammers would put rocks and stuff in the bag instead of a pig, and that didn't work. So they would put cats in a bag so that it appeared that there was like some sort of animal in the bag. But when you got home, the cat got out of the bag, and that's where you got the expression, the cat is out of the bag. You've been duped, you're exposed. Yeah. And I mean, that story in itself is lore at this point. Like, who knows how accurate that is, because cats meow and pigs point. Like I would find it hard to believe that you couldn't tell that there was a meowing cat in a bag, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good story. It's good for cocktail parties.
It's a good story. Great story.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, as an investigator, we do get contacted, people that have been scammed or they're victims of these things. And it's so hard to do the investigative work, because where do you begin? It's like, these are professional criminals. These are folks that they know what they're doing, and, tracking them down is not easy. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. And, the expectations of somebody when they're hiring a PI is like, oh, this guy, he'll find it, he'll solve it, because that's what they do on TV, like, watch Law and Order, and within an hour, they've got everything figured out. Right. So there's that expectation, that, you're going to get justice for them, which is always a challenge, because it doesn't really work out that way. And then, usually, they're taken for money. So the one thing they don't have is money to pay you to do what needs to get done, right?
Yeah. And that's like we said, the elderly one is a classic example where they just look, the warning signs of if you meet somebody online, a con artist, a cult leader, anybody that's manipulative and a psychopath will shower you with love and attention, and that feels good. When you're on the receiving end of that feels really good. If you're getting messages from this person who thinks that they adore you and they want to listen to you, and this person really gets me, but you haven't really physically met this person, it's just online, it's hard to suppress those emotions, because we all want to be loved, so that's number one. If you meet somebody online and you haven't met them in person, and it goes on for a long time, and they're always coming up with excuses why they can't meet you, and another telltale sign that you should watch out for is when they come up with these complicated scenarios, where they create this impossible reality where you get so wrapped up and tangled up into it, and the end result is that they want to wire you money, or you wire them money in some capacity. That's another red flag. You should probably stay away from that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of signs that we as that we should watch out for our parents. Like, we need to make sure that our parents aren't falling for these things.
Yeah, I had an instance that I worked on. Maybe it was about a year and a half, 2 years. It was probably about 2 years. I think it was pre-COVID. Where it was a relative of my client was in Puerto Rico, and their parents lived in Puerto Rico. So my client was here in the United States. Their parents were in Puerto Rico, and a scammer had called up the mother and said, "We have your son kidnapped." you need to go to the bank and transfer $2,500 to this bank account today, or you're never going to see your son again. And she
It's terrifying.
out. And, you know, this is an elderly person. So what does she do? She goes to the bank, 25 grand, transfers over, you know, gets a call from the son later in the day, like, hey, you know, hey mom, you know,
Yeah, what's going on?
what do you mean what's going on? Are you okay? Like, what's this and that, you know? And it's one of these, don't go to the police or they're dead, you know? And it's like, things are happening like so quickly. You've got 2 hours to comply, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, it's done.
Yes. Anytime somebody puts you in a state of urgency where they're trying to suppress your rational thinking, you know, that's a good sign too. Never make an impulse decision. Always say, I have to think about it.
Sure.
You know, buy yourself some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, you know, it's like, how do you start investigating that? Because they had come to me, hey, this scam happened. You know, it's like, hey, can you help me put it back together? Okay. First of all, you know, I don't have access to the banks in Puerto Rico really, but, you know, I would start with wire transfer numbers, like, you know, see if you can start, you know, looking in those directions. But really, you know, like, do you want to spend money on this or not? And just like 2,500 is 2,500. It's a lot of money, but it's not the end of the world either. What do you want to do? You know, and I think the other thing that con men and women do is they do those small amounts because it gets to the point where it's a hindrance to even go further. And even law enforcement is like, not enough for us to even take a look at this. Right.
Right.
But if you can do that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, you know, it turns out being a lot of money. Right.
And that's big payday.
Yeah, you can see that stuff happen. There was one I had years ago. I got contacted from somebody who they got taken for about $400,000 by a con man that was in Toronto, which was weird. And you know, they had asked me, how do we go about doing all this stuff? And I explained to them, we're going to need a forensic accountant. We're going to, you know, like I can put this all together for you. It's not my specialty. You know, it's better to know the guy than be the guy often, right? So I can get the ball rolling here and put you in with the right people, but understand that it's going to take that financial commitment to do this. And you know, it was very interesting. You know, I just thought about another one too, and this was really interesting because this was probably about a year ago. It was about a year ago. So an attorney I do business with had signed up a case where somebody was injured at a hotel or something like that. I think it was a hotel or a commercial building. They were injured, and the value of the case was probably about $75,000 to $100,000. And he signed the case up. The guy lived in Toronto, but was visiting in like I guess he was injured in New York, and that's why he hired my client. So he hires. We do a little bit of investigative work. We're in the process of the investigative work where the guy calls back and says, hey, the insurance company is offering settlement. They're going to give us $75,000, you know, to take it. And I want to take the settlement. The attorney's like, fine. So like he ends up getting a check, you know, because the way it works with the attorneys is they get the check from the insurance company. They put it into the retainer into their account, right? The account the attorneys need to have, and then the attorney writes the check to the client after the check is cleared, right? So they have this operating account, and then they have this other account for the settlements and all that. So things were starting to look a little bit fishy, because like, why would they settle? Like, how's this all? You know, like it was just weird. And they send a check over. And he goes to put the check in the account, and he's like, this check doesn't look right. Like there's something wrong here. And mind you, this other guy's calling saying, I don't want to wait for it to clear. Like, give me the money. Like, it's not a lot of money. I need it. Let's go, blah, blah, blah. Like he's pressuring him, right? To get that pressure point going in. So sure enough, like we started doing some research on the insurance company that wrote that check allegedly, you know, and it didn't exist. The short answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to guess.
All the work we did, it was good bogus. Like the whole thing was bogus. And it's like, wow, these scams are getting interesting now, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm working on two cases. One, it's not a romance scam, but it's more of a stalking situation that's happening right now. And it's really hard to track down stalkers, especially when they're using burner numbers and stuff like that. And then the other one that I'm working on right now that it was a case where a listener called me and said that her mother-in-law was, started dating this guy. They moved in together, and she had some sort of illness like Parkinson's or whatever, but she rapidly deteriorated and died. And he was on the will, and then now he's living with the lady, his girlfriend's mother. So like grandma now is living with this guy, right. And the family suspects that he's trying to rip off grandma too. And they're telling grandma, hey, this guy is a fraud. And, he just moves on from woman to woman. And so looking into that, it's crazy.
Yeah. I do get a lot of the romance scam calls from people that have their parents, maybe the one's widowed. A lot of times it's either widowed or divorced, where there's this new younger person in their life.
Oh yeah.
And or a new man in the life,
Right.
Of mom, right? And I want to do a background check on this guy to make sure, because something seems like it's off a bit, and then you start looking into it and you see all these like larceny convictions and stuff, or drug related stuff that happened a few times. And you go back and you give that information to the client, and now they have to go give it to their parent, and it's a tough pill to swallow. Mom or dad thinks this is, they've got a second chance at love towards the end of their life, and it's all built on a house of cards, right?
No, that's crazy. I bet you do see that a lot as a private investigator.
Yeah, we get those. I try.
That's probably the number one story that comes to me from listeners. Like it's some sort of romance scam.
Yeah. I try not to take those jobs, honestly, because I just don't like them. I'll entertain a phone call and I'll try and point somebody in the right direction on it. But actually doing the work, I don't like doing it because it usually doesn't turn out the way they want it to turn out.
Right.
And I don't want to see them after they've been taken for money. Now put out more money, and we'll investigate it. We'll follow all the leads we can, but the reality is you're probably not going to get the answer that you hope to get. Right. Or even when you do get the answer that you hope to get, is law enforcement going to be willing to prosecute? Because a lot of times they don't. It's not big enough for them. They want to be involved because there's just not enough of a payday there. So it's very interesting stuff. So I don't know. You got any more? Anything else that pops out?
I'm trying to think of other romance scams that I've gotten that are unusual. I would say that the one with the Wendy's CEO, that one's crazy. If you ever get a chance to listen to that one, it's called, I forget what I called it, but that one's just nuts. But that's the thing, like you were saying, they're so frequent and it's so out there that after a while you hear so many of these stories and they all start sounding the same. And so, but I do think that it's because there's so many out there. I think it's important to pay attention to it. Well, I do have one, actually. I pulled this one. This one I pulled from the FBI's website. I had never heard of this story. But there's this 81-year-old lady named Glenda, and she met the love of her life online, classic. And she's a U.S. citizen. Her lover was from Nigeria. I guess you know where this story is going. Right. And he asked for her to help him out with his business so that he could leave Nigeria.
Of course.
And he would send her these cell phones, and she would pawn them and send him the money. Well, eventually she opened up a personal and a business account for him, and he would send her these checks and she would deposit them into these accounts. And basically what she was just doing was she was a money mule for these guys.
She was wondering, yes.
Yeah. And basically the authorities showed up at her doorstep and told her to stop, and she didn't. And now she pled guilty to 2 federal felonies because she's I don't know, man. I mean, part of me is like, come on, this doesn't make sense. Like everyone listening to this right now is like saying, no, don't
It's
do
obvious,
it.
right?
But she kept doing it. And we all had elderly parents, grandparents, the people that are struggling maybe with dementia, and it's so easy to victim blame,
Yeah.
but it's not. You don't know until you're in it, how convincing and these people could be.
You go and you look at social media, you look at the TikToks and the Instagrams and even the Facebooks to a point, with the whole thing of filters and just this false reality of creating, this persona of somebody you're not. It's so easy. And we're going to wind down with this last story here, because I think it's hilarious. And
Right.
it's somebody in that world doing those kinds of things that is so committed to the con. You just got to tip your hat to how committed they are. So I had this situation earlier in the year where there was this woman that was going out and soliciting people, online for whatever, romantic scam, you name it. This is what was going to happen. So it comes across my desk, right? And I'm taking a look at this thing, and I'm like, okay, well, let's look into this person. And you start looking into this person, and you find out that they basically are lazy, and they took the persona of somebody who was like an internet celebrity who had like a lot of followers, right? And it was one of these, I forget the name of it, but it was one of these ladies who was a little bit older, but she dressed like really sexy. Like she'd wear like lingerie and things like that. So it's like, she was obviously targeting, the 50, 60, 70-year-old guys that are like, oh, wow, vroom, like, look at that. I'm still getting into it. Right. So, this person basically scraped the images of that person. Right. And like, you name it. And it was like, they had images of this person drinking coffee. Like how I know you are who you say you are. Well, how about if I pour myself a cup of coffee? Sure. Show me a picture of you drinking coffee now. Great. And there they are with the picture of coffee, right? It's like they got them all lined up, this and that, right? So this is where I talk about the commitment to the con, right? So I get to the point where I was just like, I'm going to call this person out. Listen, I'm a private investigator. I've done my due diligence, and it's obvious that you're taking images from this person. Like, you need to leave this other person alone, right? We got you. You're dead to rights. You're done, right? And you know what this person says to me? Oh, that celebrity's impersonating me. I have like criminal charges against that person for stealing my persona. So it's like, okay, the person who's been verified by Instagram, whatever, that has the green check or whatever, like they're the ones that are false and you're the ones that's true.
Right.
You don't understand. They have been dealing this for years. It's the worst. Like, they've completely ruined my life because they've taken my my identity. like they start playing this victim thing, and I'm just like, wow, that's a commitment to the con.
Yeah, even when they're so brazen, because the thing is that there is no downside for them to keep trying. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Eventually, somebody falls for it. Even, yeah. I mean, a little sad story like that, you could have been like, oh man, you might have fallen for it.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of this investigation where it's happening in real time, and it's a stalker story, and I don't even know who the bad guy is at this point, because it's just the way things are. I mean, you have this mysterious stalker coming after this victim, and I believe the victim. Like, I personally believe the victim, but then a little voice in the back of your head is telling me, am I being played?
Exactly,
right. Yeah.
We just blame Michael Bazell. It's all Michael's fault.
Yeah. Well, I think he's responsible for making me very paranoid.
There you go. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So how do folks get a hold of you if they have any questions for you?
Well, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, I'm at Pretend Pod, or you could go to my website, pretendradio.org, or just type in Pretend on any podcast app and you'll find me. And my other podcast is Criminal Conduct, and we're about to launch season 3, probably around the same time this episode comes out. Right. And I'm interviewing a serial killer. down in Panama. He called me on New Year's Day out of the blue. And so there you are.
That's interesting. I guess he's no extradition. He's on the run.
Oh, we'll find out.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Javier, thank you so much for coming on. This is it's been great to chat with you and just kind of spitball about this topic. It's interesting to see your perspective and then a perspective of the investigator. And I hope everybody has a great Valentine's Day. I hope you don't overpay for your flowers today, and hopefully you're not scrambling to buy your gift today. You've done some proactive work. And
go to Costco. They have
do something.
Great deal.
Do something. There's some guy in the street that's probably selling a bear for like $75. Go buy one.
Buy an orchid. There
you go.
It'll last longer. Yeah.
But thank you so much again for coming on, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And we'll catch everybody next week on the next show.
A special thank you for Javier for coming on and talking about this fun topic. Make sure you check out his Pretend podcast. It's a great listen. We also want to thank Crosstrack, Scope Now, PI Institute of Education, CGA, and NCISS for sponsoring the show. So please support our great supporters and register for that free town hall meeting. Now, have you thought about joining Investigator's Toolbox yet? Now's the time to do so. Get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Use code PIP201836 to save 10% on membership. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there. Happy Valentine's Day.